Okay, so offline mode is one of the most requested features for Payday 3, and Starbreeze have finally broken the months of silence surrounding this topic. Offline mode was announced as part of Operation Medic Bag, but it just never came. Sure, we got solo mode, but that didn't really address the issues that a full offline mode would have. Despite it literally being on the list of changes for Operation Medic Bag, a full offline mode was never added to the game. And in fact, in my last video, I said that I didn't think we'd be receiving an offline mode anytime soon, if ever. Thankfully though, that aged very poorly. This tweet confirming Starbreeze will be talking about offline mode in the coming weeks was posted a handful of hours before my video went live, and it was only brought to my attention a few days later. Almir also touched on the subject during one of his recent live streams. So now that the conversation around this offline mode is seemingly picking back up again, I wanted to discuss just why it's so important, and also why it may not necessarily be coming to the game in the way we all might have hoped it would. Before we jump into how an offline mode could work in Payday 3, it's important to understand why an offline mode is so important. It isn't just there so players who might not have a consistent or stable internet connection are able to play the game, though that is an important factor to consider. Currently, players who prefer to enjoy their games offline or might not even have the option to play online have literally no way to play Payday 3 at all. I, of course, have no way of knowing exactly how many more people would be playing Payday 3 consistently if they had the option to play offline, but as somebody who prefers to play the game solo, I would certainly use an offline mode if it meant there was no chance of me getting booted out of the game. In fact, pretty much all of my playtime in Payday 2 was spent in the game's offline mode. But connection issues aside, there's also the concern of the game's longevity. Payday 3 is still a game with an uncertain future. We don't know how much longer Payday 3 will be supported by Starbreeze. As much as I'd love to see the game make a full comeback, we can't hide from the very real possibility that it might not. And if support for the game is ended, then once those servers go offline, all of the content within the game is gone. All of the free stuff, all of the paid stuff, absolutely everything within Payday 3 will be lost if the servers go offline and the game doesn't have a built-in dedicated way to play without those servers. An offline mode would also allow us to continue playing the game while it was being updated, so we wouldn't have to sit around twiddling our thumbs until the team were finished patching the game. At the end of the day, I don't need to really explain all the different reasons why an offline mode is so important for a game to have, and that's why we were so excited to see it on the Operation Medic Bag roadmap. There were many people who said they wouldn't even consider buying the game until there was a full offline mode, and I've seen many comments over the last few weeks from people saying they would happily buy the game in the state it's in right now if it just had an offline mode. But Operation Medic Bag came and went, and all we got was solo mode, which allowed us to bypass the matchmaking process and load straight into a lobby by yourself. At the time, that was a fantastic improvement over what we had. Before solo mode, if you wanted to play by yourself, you would need to wait just as long for the matchmaking to work as you would if you were playing with a full squad of 4. And then you've got to remember that the servers for Payday 3 really weren't the best back then, and they're still not now, but they were a lot worse. So being able to bypass that matchmaking queue was fantastic. But it was only step 1. The problem is solo mode still requires a full, constant internet connection, so does nothing to address the core issues an offline mode would fix. After Operation Medic Bag came to an end, we heard nothing about this offline mode for months. It is still the most requested edition on the feature upvote page, and the community hasn't stopped talking about it. We've been just as vocal about it over the last few months as we have for the last year. The silence was all on Starbreeze's side, but that silence has now been broken with a tweet we mentioned earlier and a clip from Almir's stream, and these really got me thinking, what would an offline mode in Payday 3 actually look like? Because let's not forget, Payday 3 is a game that was designed to be always online, and as such, an offline mode must be a complicated thing to add to the game. And actually, it's because of this that I think the offline mode we might see in Payday 3 is going to be very different from the online experience. I even think that it's possible that an offline mode for Payday 3 won't have a progression system at all. But just before we talk about that, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you all for the support here on the channel recently. We received over 100,000 views in the last 28 days alone, which is extremely humbling. And we are also well on our way to breaking our goal of 3,000 subscribers. In fact, it's very likely that we're going to hit 3,000 subscribers within the first few hours of this video being out. If you remember, we set the goal of reaching 3,000 3,000 subscribers before the next heist is released just a couple of weeks ago, and we've absolutely blown that out of the water. I said if we hit that milestone, then I'd take on some challenge runs suggested by you in the comments. So, depending on how long it takes me to get through those challenge runs, you can expect those videos in the coming weeks. I really didn't think that we would be able to reach 3,000 subscribers before the next heist was released, but you've completely proven me wrong. And if you can't tell, I quite like setting goals that I don't think we'll be able to hit. So I'm going to set another one, and this one I'm really sure we're not going to be able to hit, but I'm gonna make it worth your while if we do. If we reach 5,000 subscribers before the release of Payday 3's next heist, I will commit to begin playing and reviewing all of the Payday 2 DLC heists that never made their way over to console, and as such, as a console player, I have never played. So think of my Payday 3 update videos, you'll be getting one of those for each of the Payday 2 PC exclusive heists. 5,000 may seem like a lot, and that's because it is. As I said, I don't think you're going to be able to do it, but I welcome you to prove me wrong, as you have done every other time so far. Thank you all for the support, we have our next goal, and now let's go back to talking about the offline mode. I want to pick up where we left off by playing a clip from Almir's stream. I think what he says here is very important.
We said on Twitter that offline mode is something we haven't touched on since we initially discussed it. We will share additional details regarding how that would look, whether or not it will happen, whether or not it's peer-to-peer, whether or not it's full offline mode, whatever, you know, because we haven't said anything about it. And it's a serious topic that requires a serious answer from us developers. I would not do my job if I would like try to appease you now and say, yeah, offline mode is exactly going to happen the way you think. That's not true until the developers say that it can be so. You know what I mean? So please, I get it. It's a super serious topic for many heisters, but that does not mean that I'm gonna try to sugarcoat anything or, you know, trying to do like a white lie where I say, yeah, we're gonna do exactly what you want. Just buy Payday 3 now. No. If you haven't bought Payday 3 yet, because offline mode is a huge topic for you, I get that. And I suggest you don't buy it until you know for sure what's gonna happen. It's as simple as that, right?
Besides for just being a really good move to not confirm or deny anything until the devs are ready to actually share more, this really got me thinking about the many different ways an offline mode could materialize in Payday 3. I think that while we're all talking about an offline mode, we might not all be talking about the same offline mode. There's a lot we need to consider. Firstly, we need to consider how offline an offline mode would be. It's very possible that an offline mode for Payday 3 would be to have the game run on a peer-to-peer basis, so if one player hosted the game, you could still play with a full squad of heisters, even when you were disconnected from the Starbreeze servers. This is pretty much how Payday 2 ran. Then again, it's also possible that this offline mode would just allow the game to run without a server connection on your PC, without the ability to connect to other players. This is the type of offline mode I anticipate that we'll get in Payday 3, so when the day comes that the servers are inevitably switched off, that's it for cooperative play. Be it in 1 year or 10, there is a very possible chance that even with an offline mode, Payday 3 as a co-op game still has a sell-by date. Then we really need to consider how progression is going to work in this offline mode as well. We know that your infamy points, cash, and C-stacks are all tied to your Nebula account. That's what enables things like cross-progression to occur. Because these things are all linked to your Nebula account, you can take them from platform to platform without having anything saved locally. If Starbreeze implemented a completely offline way to play the game, that really throws a spanner in the works of how they would be able to track your progression. Without requiring you to periodically connect to the servers to sync your progression data, I don't really know how an offline mode for Payday 3 would allow you to continue leveling up without splitting your progression between offline and online play. In fact, I would imagine that an offline mode bypasses Nebula entirely. If it doesn't, then that still doesn't really meet the requirements for a completely offline game that some people may need succeed if they don't have a strong internet connection. I envision that when you boot up Payday 3 for the first time, you will be prompted to either log in with Nebula or play the game offline. For now, you can only sign into your Nebula account if you have one, or else you're unable to play the game. But hopefully that offline button will be there at some point for players in the future, so that you have the ability to play without needing to sign in. For those of us that are signed in, I would imagine the same offline button appears somewhere on the main menu, but would still take you to a version of the game that isn't connected to Nebula. An example of something like this that jumps out as a parallel is Black Ops 3 Zombies. You can play the game online, but by selecting offline play, you're able to play without an internet connection, but are warned that none of your progression will be synced to your online account. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is where the big issue with offline mode has been for Starbreeze, and this is why we haven't heard about it in so long, and more importantly, why it wasn't added to the game during year 1. Having now thought about it a lot more over the last few days, I really believe that Nebula and progression is what's been holding back this offline mode, and because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if when an offline mode is released, it's just a way to play the heists offline by yourself with all of the weapons, skills, armor, gadgets and equipment unlocked from the get-go, because there simply isn't a progression system. Either that, or you'll have to start your platform-specific offline account, so to speak, from level 1. Obviously, and I want to be 100% clear about this, pretty much everything that we've spoken about in this video has been pure speculation. I don't know any more about this offline mode than has been said publicly, and I look forward to hearing more about it over the coming weeks. I just wanted to share some of the thoughts that I've been having about this offline mode recently, especially with what's been said this week. End of the day, I could be completely wrong, but this is the line of questioning that what's been said recently has sparked off in my brain. Let me know what you think about the possibility of having an offline mode in Payday 3 without any progression, something that is entirely separate from the main game when it's played online. If you want to hear my thoughts about a massive opportunity that Starbreeze currently have that, to be honest with you, it doesn't seem like they're capitalizing on as much as they should be, you can click the video on screen now to hear all about that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.